Ellsworth Wham. With just 17 years, he felt for the first time that inner call that would change forever the course of his existence. It was a feeling that was difficult for someone to explain. So young, a mixture of absolute certainty, and life purpose that was installed in his chest like a compass infallible. While his classmates, they rambled about their futures, changing their minds every week, Ellsworth remained unwavering in his conviction. Medicine was not simply a career for him, it was his manifest destiny. That spring morning, sitting in his library high school, Maynes was browsing with reverence an old book of human anatomy. His fingers delicately ran over the illustrations of the heart, that extraordinary muscle that tirelessly pumps life. It's like a dance perfect, he thought, while I was studying the synchronized movement of the atria and ventricles. What for others, students? It was a tedious biology class, but for him it was a window to a fascinating universe that he wanted to explore in all its glory, complexity. Some day, he promised himself. I will understand every corner of this miraculous organ. And not only that, but I will learn how to repair it when this damaged. It was an excessive ambition for a boy of a little village, son of a modest family, and without medical history. But the burning passion in its interior was larger than any material obstacle. The years that followed were a demonstration extraordinary. Determination. While many of his colleagues abandoned their aspirations in the face of first difficulty, Ellsworth turned every obstacle into a step further your goal. The study nights extended until the dawn. The books were piling up in his room as silent witnesses to his unwavering discipline, and his mind absorbed knowledge with a thirst insatiable that amazed teachers and family members alike. The faculty of medicine represented a new level of demand. Sometimes, the young Wham wondered if he would have enough strength to continue. The body, he was asking for rest. His mind was begging for a truce. However, it was enough to remember that first moment of epiphany with the anatomy book, for the forces would return multiplied. It wasn't a question of ego or recognition. It was that vocation genuine that transcended a physical fatigue and doubts momentary. What distinguished Ellsworth from many of his brilliant companions were not necessarily your IQ, but that passion fireproof that illuminated every step of his training. While others, they studied to pass exams, he studied to transform lives. This subtle but fundamental difference was reflected in the intensity with which he absorbed each lesson, in the questions he asked his teachers, in the additional hours he devoted to the laboratories when everyone had returned home. The history of cardiac medicine was writing in those years, and Ellsworth sensed that his destiny was interlaced with this revolutionary chapter. Advances in cardiovascular surgery began to emerge as a possibility real, although still surrounded by enormous risks and technical limitations. The heart, that sacred organ that for centuries had been considered untouchable, was beginning to reveal its secrets to those brave enough to explore it. I want to be among the first ones who dare to repair a human heart as it beats, he confessed one night to his mentor, Dr. Thompson, a veteran surgeon who had recognized the extraordinary potential of that young, passionate. The answer of the old doctor was left recorded forever in his memory. To make what no one in fact, you will have to sacrifice what everyone wants: comfort, certainty, and conformity. Are you willing to pay that price? Ellsworth didn't need to ponder the question. I am, he replied with a conviction that surprised even his experienced mentor. The years of specialization were a test of fire for his vocation. While classmates, looking for less demanding and better paid specialties, Ellsworth immersed himself in the challenging world of thoracic surgery. Every procedure was a learning opportunity, every patient a sacred trust, every mistake a painful but necessary lesson. His dedication did not pass unnoticed. As its reputation grew, they began to arrive invitations to join the more prestigious teams. However, Ellsworth, he carefully selected his opportunities, always prioritizing those that you allowed advance in his true objective, to master the most advanced surgical techniques to intervene the human heart. The decisive moment came at the end of the 1980s. 50. Loma Linda University was looking for a surgeon visionary willing to establish a pioneering cardiac surgery program. The proposal arrived in the perfect moment. Ellsworth had accumulated the necessary experience and was burning in wishes to put in practice all your knowledge. Without hesitation, he accepted the challenge that would mark not only his race, but the history of medicine in the United States, the day in which Dr. Wham made the first heart surgery open. In Loma Linda, it was registered as a historic milestone. The tension was palpable in the operating room. Many, they considered that the intervention was premature, too risky. The patient, a 42-year-old man with valvular disease severe, there was accepted submit to the surgery as a last hope. If we don't try, Ellsworth had explained calmly to the medical committee, this man will die in a matter of months. We have the knowledge and resources to offer you an opportunity. For 7 hours, the team led by Dr. Wham job with millimeter precision. Every movement had been mentally rehearsed hundreds of times. When finally the repaired heart began to beat again regular force, an emotion indescribable toward the inside room. It wasn't just a successful procedure. It was the materialization of a dream pursued with devotion for decades. This was the first of hundreds of hearts that Dr. Wham would repair throughout its extraordinary career. With a passage of the years, he perfected techniques, trained new generations of cardiac surgeons, and constantly expanded the limits of the possible in his field. His name became synonymous with excellence and courage surgical. It truly amazing of his trajectory was not only the technical brilliance, but the longevity of your practice active. While the most of the surgeons retire around the 65 years old due to the natural deterioration of the fine motor precision, Dr. Wham continued operating regularly until 74 years old. His patients continued requesting it specifically, relying on those expert hands that had saved countless lives. When asked about the secret of his extraordinary physical and mental resistance, Dr. Wham responded invariably with a serene smile. When you do exactly what you were for created, the universe conspires to give you forces extraordinary. My passion for the surgery doesn't exhaust me. It revitalizes me every day. Even after retiring from the practice surgical active, Dr. Wham continuous regularly attending surgeries as a consultant and mentor. See a 90-year-old surgeon in an operating room. It was initially disconcerting to the young residents, but a few minutes of observation were enough to understand that their presence was a privilege extraordinary. The sharpness of his observations, the clarity of his instructions, and the calm he conveyed in critical situations were invaluable lessons for the new generations of doctors. It was at 95 years old when he finally decided to withdraw completely from the hospital activity. The decision, it surprised many, because his lucidity and vigor continued being notables. I'm not retiring because I can't continue, he explained, with the same clarity that had characterized his entire career. I am retiring because I wish to dedicate the energy that I have left for my family, especially Barbara. My life partner who has sacrificed so much for me could fulfill my purpose. The story Dr. Wham's represents a powerful lesson on the transformative impact of passion authentic. It's not just about finding something we like not to do, but to discover that activity that resonates deeply with our most intimate essence. For him, every incision, every suture, every procedure complex was an expression of his true being. He did not work out of obligation but out of devotion, and that fundamental difference made his career into a constant source of vitality instead of exhaustion. Various contemporary scientific studies confirm what Dr. Wham discovered through personal experience. People who find and live their life purpose not only reports higher levels of satisfaction, but statistically tend to live longer and with better health. Passion Genuine activates neurological and hormonal mechanisms that promote the cell regeneration, strengthen the immune system, and increase the stress resistance. Medicine was never a work for me, he reflected Dr. Wham on his birthday 100 years. It was a privilege, a joy, and a mission. When every morning you wake up anxious to start your day, when time fades away while you do your work, when you feel like you are exactly where you should be. You have found your passion true, and that passion will return to you multiplied everything you invested in She, including years of full life. His legacy transcends the thousands of patients saved directly by his hands. Dr. Wham's true impact is measured in the generations of surgeons that he trained, in the protocols that he established, in the techniques he perfected, and above all, in the inspiration that represented for all those who had the privilege of working alongside him or listening to him his history. The passion, authenticity, when cultivated with discipline and perseverance, not only transforms an individual life, it has the power to change the world. The moments that redefine the course of a lifetime usually arrive without prior notice, camouflaged in the everyday life, revealing its significance only in retrospect. For Dr. Ellsworth Wham, that defining moment, it happened during a freezing November dawn in 1940, $3 in a hospital ship sailing in the South Pacific during the Second World War. Ellsworth, then a young military doctor who had just graduated, had been assigned as a medical officer in the naval unit. The war, with all its crudeness, they had prematurely faced situations limit for which no textbook could having prepared him. That morning, while the majority of the crew was sleeping, the medical alarm sounded through the metal corridors of the ship. "Doctor in cover! Urgent!" The words rumbled with the characteristic echo of the military loudspeakers. Ellsworth immediately sat up, leaving the letter to his family that wrote, taking advantage the hours of relative calm. With movements agile born from recent experience, he went to the medical emergency area. The patient was the Captain Harrington, a man respected by all crew, known for their temperance in critical moments and their humane treatment with the bow subordinates. At 50, 3 years due, the captain there was suffered a severe heart attack. When Ellsworth arrived at his side, the senior officer presented all the classic signs: intense chest pain that radiated toward his arm left, profuse sweating, extreme pallor and difficulty, evident respiratory. "Doctor," he muttered, "Captain," between ragged breaths, "I think this time the battle is internal." Despite his critical situation, maintained that stoic sense of humor that characterized Ellsworth and the available medical team. They deployed all the limited resources that a war hospital ship could offer. They stabilized the patient, administered available medications, monitored vital signs. However, the feeling of helplessness grew with every minute. Ellsworth, I knew that in a land hospital with surgical resources suitable, the chances of survival of the captain would be significantly larger. For 26 hours, Ellsworth did not leave his side. On the side of the captain, the fight was intensely personal, as if every heartbeat they achieved was a small one victory against death. However, with the first lights of the second dawn, the body exhausted of the Captain Harrington finally gave in. His heart damage stopped beating while the young doctor maintained his hand, powerless before the inevitable outcome that he had tried to avoid with despair. That death shook Ellsworth in ways that no one other at there was fact, despite having already witnessed too many in the battlefields. It was not just the loss of a man admirable, but the tormenting certainty that in others' circumstances, with more advanced knowledge and adequate resources, perhaps could have been avoided. Captain Harrington had not died of war wounds. He had succumbed to an internal enemy, against which the medical science yet was fighting a battle uncertain. The night after the death of the captain, while Ellsworth contemplated the infinite ocean, from the deck of the ship, made a decision that would permanently alter the direction of his life. If he survived the war, he would dedicate every remaining day of his existence to become the kind of doctor who could having saved Captain Harrington. It would not be enough to be a good surgeon, would aspire to master the most advanced techniques in cardiovascular surgery, a field that was just beginning to develop. "I promise that your death will not be in vain," he whispered to the sea wind, like a solemn oath to the spirit of the captain. "For every life I couldn't save in this war, I will save 10 when come back home." At the end of the war, conflict Ellsworth Wham He returned to civilian life with a determination that amazed those who they knew. While many veteran war doctors chose to settle quickly in comfortable practices that allowed to recover the wasted time, he chose the hardest path, to extend his residency to specialize in thoracic surgery, a demanding field that required years additional intensive training. Because complicate things life, friends and colleagues constantly asked, "Already you have served your country, you deserve to settle down and enjoy a quiet life." Ellsworth's response was always the same. "My purpose is not to seek comfort, but to keep a promise." She rarely shared the history of the Captain Harrington. That memory remained as a private sanctuary that fed his determination in the high moments more difficult. The years of specialization were extraordinarily demanding. While their classmates formed families and consolidated races, Ellsworth voluntarily subjected himself to grueling workdays, accumulating surgical experience with a veracity that surprised even the more veteran surgeons. Their ability to function with minimal hours of sleep became legendary among residents. "Dr. Wham doesn't sleep," they joked. "He just goes into power, saving mode between surgeries." It was true that the clear vision of your life purpose provided a source inexhaustible, energy that transcended the ordinary physical limitations. Each patient represented an opportunity to perfect the skills that someday could make the difference between life and death, as there was occurred with the Captain Harrington. His specialization was not limited to formal programs. Aware that the most promising advances in heart surgery was being done developing in very specific centers, Ellsworth requested special rotations in hospitals, pioneers in pediatric heart surgery, the extreme delicacy required to operate on hearts of the walnut-sized represented the ultimate challenge for a surgeon. In Boston Children's Hospital, had the opportunity to observe the best specialists performing procedures that just a few years before were considered impossible. Instead of limiting himself to the scheduled hours, he remained in the hospital practically day and night, absorbing knowledge with an intensity that impressed the most experienced surgeons from the Center. "I've never seen anyone with such a hunger for knowledge," he commented. Dr. Henderson, chief of pediatric cardiac surgery, after observing Ellsworth voluntarily attend a 12-hour intervention after completing their official shift. "It's as if each procedure was a personal mission for him." Her absolute dedication began to pay off. As she gained experience, Ellsworth was developing modifications subtle in established techniques, improving time surgical and post-operative results. His hands looked like possess one's own memory, a precision almost supernatural that minimized surgical trauma. When he finally completed his specialized training, Ellsworth received offers from the most prestigious medical centers in the country. He could have chosen any elite urban hospital, with unlimited resources and remuneration extraordinary. However, true to his vision of purpose, made a decision that baffled the medical community. Returned to Loma Linda, an institution that, although respectable, was not listed then among the avant-garde centers in heart surgery. "Why Loma Linda?" he asked directly the director from the Boston program, visibly frustrated at losing an exceptional talent. Ellsworth's response was simple but revealing. "Because there I can build something new from the foundations. I don't want to be just another piece in a system already established. I want to create a program that saves lives that would otherwise be lost. There are regions whole without access to advanced cardiac surgery. That's my mission." Behind that one decision, there was also a personal connection with the integral philosophy of the Loma Linda University, which emphasized the link between body, mind, and spirit in the healing process. This vision resonated deeply with Ellsworth, who through his experience had understood that the technical excellence was required to complement each other with a humanistic approach to medicine. The return to Loma Linda in 1958 framed the beginning of a new era for the institution. With determination unbreakable, Ellsworth began building a cardiac surgery department from scratch. He carefully recruited professionals who shared not only his pursuit of technical excellence, but also his commitment with a medicine focused on the patient. The culminating moment arrived with the first heart surgery open made in the institution. The procedure, considered extremely risky in that time, had been meticulously planned for months. The patient was a 48-year-old man, years with severe mitral stenosis that limited dramatically his quality of life. Without the intervention, his forecast was grim. The surgery, which lasted more than 8 hours, was followed with attention by all available medical personnel. When Ellsworth finally completed the valve repair, and heart of the patient resumed its heartbeat with a strong and regular rhythm, a reverential silence invaded the operating room, followed by an explosion of pent-up emotions. It was not simply a successful technical procedure. It represented the materialization of a dream pursued with tenacity since that time evening in the warship. In the following decades, under the Dr. Wham's visionary leadership, transformed Loma Linda's department of cardiac surgery in an international reference center. The procedures pioneers followed one another, always guided by a clear purpose: to extend the limits of the possible to save lives that were previously considered irretrievably lost. The impact of his work transcended the borders nationals. Aware that his mission could not limiting itself to a single hospital, Ellsworth, he began to devote regular periods of time to traveling to countries with less developed healthcare systems. Pakistan, Greece, Saudi Arabia, and numerous Latin American countries received your visit not as a passing consultant, but as a teacher committed to the transfer effective knowledge. In each country, its methodology was similar. It selected the surgeon's most promising premises and worked intensively with them for weeks or even months. He didn't just demonstrate. He insisted, in which local doctors assumed progressively the leading role in the procedures, always under his careful supervision. His goal was not to create dependence on your presence, but to ensure that his departure would leave behind them teams trained to continue saving lives. The true measure of the success is not in what you achieve personally, he explained to his international disciples, but in what others can achieve thanks to you when you are no longer present. This philosophy of impact multiplication became a hallmark of its career. For Dr. Wham, each surgeon trained potentially represented hundreds or thousands of lives saved in the future. This awareness of being creating a lasting legacy fed his energy, even in moments of greatest physical fatigue. At 70 years old, when the most of the surgeons already they carry retired years, Ellsworth maintained a pace of activity that amazed colleagues decades younger. He continued to operate regularly, although with a selectivity major, focusing in particularly complex cases where their unique experience made a crucial difference. When Think Retire, Dr. Wham asked on one occasion a journalist during an interview for a medical journal. The answer would become famous: when my purpose is fulfilled or when my hands can no longer serve with excellence to my patients. Until then, every day in the operating room is a privilege that I do not think waste. The exceptional longevity of its career surgical active, it remained operating regularly until 74 years. He challenged the usual statistics of the profession. Various neurological studies carried out later would confirm what many had observed. Dr. Wham's fine motor skills presented a preservation extraordinary, comparable to those of surgeons 30 years younger. Researchers speculated that this exceptional preservation of capabilities could be related to the constant activation of specific neural circuits driven by a powerful life purpose. Neuroplasticity, the ability of the brain to reorganize and optimize its functions, seemed to be significantly enhanced in people with a clearly defined life mission. Even after finally retire from the surgery active, Ellsworth found new ways to channel their life purpose. He became an exceptional mentor, sharing not only surgical techniques but also the philosophy of life that had supported his extraordinary career. His presence in the operating rooms as an observer and advisor extended incredibly, almost 95 years old. See Dr. Wham analyze a complex case is like witnessing a chess grandmaster visualize 20 moves in advance, he commented with admiration. Dr. Rodriguez, one of his last disciples. His mind has not lost an iota of strategic acuity. He can anticipate complications, potentials, that neither we had not even been happened to the rest of the team. When he finally decided to withdraw completely from the hospital activity, its decision was not a response to a deterioration in capabilities, but rather to a conscious recalibration of priorities. After decades of intense service, he felt he had arrived the moment to dedicate your remaining energy to its family, especially his wife, Barbara, who had been a fundamental pillar in his life. "I have kept my promise to Captain Harrington 1,000-fold," the man explained calmly. Day of his official farewell. It's time to honor others' equally important promises. The story Dr. Wams illustrates with crystal clarity the transformative power of a life guided by a transcendent purpose. It's not just about having professional goals, but about connecting the activity daily with deep values and personal meanings that transcend the individual benefit. The research contemporary in positive psychology confirms what the life of Dr. Wam exemplifies. People who live with a clear sense of purpose not only reports higher levels of life satisfaction, but statistically tend to live longer and with better physical and mental health. A sense of purpose acts as a factor protector against degenerative diseases, depression, and cognitive decline associated with aging. What gives value to the existence? He reflected Dr. Wam celebrating his centenary. It is not the duration of our days, but the purpose we infuse into each of them. A long life without purpose is merely a prolonged existence, a life driven by a mission. Transcendent, however brief, is a complete life. His legacy remains not only in the thousands of lives directly saved by his hands, but in the dozens of established cardiac surgery programs thanks to its influence, in the generations of surgeons trained under his tutelage, and above all, in the inspiration that your history provides anyone seeking to infuse transcendent meaning into their existence. Purpose, when it is authentic and cultivated with perseverance, not only transforms an individual biography, it has the power to change the world, a heart at a time.